I'm actually excited.
Good.
Actually excited to see everybody here who's interested in owning what we call a piece of the rock.
Yeah.
A small piece of the rock or a very large piece of the rock.
Yeah.
And how do you get there? This is what we're here for today. So I'm excited. How about you?
I am as well. I'll tell you, there are a couple of people that are in the audience that I've helped to get their first term. There are a couple of people that I'm in the process of helping. And when they come up here for that buyers panel, you'll hear how much of a headache buying really is. But when it's all said and done, they're happy that they went through the process, right? We're going to talk about why locking in your price is important today.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we always tell people when you're buying real estate is you need to know what your numbers is. We're going to talk about that today. Inga, when me and you were talking about this event, we were talking about the importance of legacy in buying property. Matter of fact, Inga tells a story about this nightmare story of how she wished she would have bought that lot then. Why don't you tell that story?
Let me tell you, listen, I cringe when I tell this story, guys. And I hope that by me telling you this story that you can not allow it to happen to you. So there was a lovely piece of property in Lake Cunningham. Anybody know Lake Cunningham? That is creme de la creme, isn't it? It's gated. It's right at the mouth of Bahama. At that time, it was merely $55,000. And I said, $55,000? No way. I can beat that. And I found a piece for $20,000. And what did you think I did? I want to cry. I took the $20,000 one because I saw an immediate benefit of a $35,000 savings, but not looking at the long term.
And excuse me 1 second. Mike, could we hear her clearly? Do we want her louder? Do we need
her louder?
Everybody could hear her?
You can?
A little louder,
You can?
please.
Okay, I can do that. I can do that. And I allowed that property to slip away. And let me tell you, there were a few friends that went ahead and bought, and they were able to sell that property, those that did, for at least 4 times the amount of the 55. Would you believe it? A missed opportunity of equity, of value, of living in that area. But no doubt, I learned a little bit more. And that's okay, we start somewhere, and it's about starting somewhere and getting to where you want to be. Okay? But if you don't know, you just don't know. And that's okay. This is the time now. If you decide to wait until tomorrow or next year or the year after, what do you think is going to happen? Prices go up. I haven't seen prices drop, not in this little island that we're on, and even on the Family Islands. I haven't seen prices go down.
I haven't seen it.
So this is the time to do it. So what we are here to do today, if you haven't, most of you, we have already assessed you. We have pre-qualified letters waiting at the desk at CIBC.
So you're saying Mingo ain't qualified? I see but 5 people over there. What would make 3 qualified, but 7 people in First Caribbean outfit.
Qualified.
Wow.
We brought the bank here to the team today.
Yes.
Okay, it's that important to us. Home ownership is a huge, huge thing, guys.
Right.
Owning a piece of the rock is huge. It's the start of building wealth. You believe that?
Yeah.
It's the start of it. If you don't plan to acquire property or home or a duplex or a triplex, and I always talk about the benefit of a duplex or triplex. You live in one, supplemental income from the second and the third helps you to pay for that. Your salary is free, basically.
Yeah.
And what does that allow you to do?
A lot. A
lot more. Then I can go back to Matt at One Oak.
Yes.
And I can then acquire something else.
Yeah, repeat the go back to Matt at One Oak.
I can go back. It's so important, guys, that you understand that as young individuals, or even someone that's just starting out, funds that flow in your pocket, that's an asset. Rental income supplementing your base salary will always be a plus to you, and it would not be a burden on your pocket.
Yeah.
Okay? And then it allows you then to propel to that dream home. Or even another duplex or triplex that then builds wealth. And then what do? As individuals, we want to leave something for our kids. And why we want to do that? We want to give them a boost.
Yes.
So that when they in turn finish, and you don't want to spoil them, I'm not saying that you spoil them, but you have to help them now to build. You have to be wise how you spend your money. but it's about sacrifice and it's about discipline.
Yes.
We'll talk a little bit more about that. And I think we need a whole session around financial literacy.
We do have a whole session around it. And then, you know, when we look at, again, when I think about the buyers that are here, and quite a number of them couldn't make it, there's a theme that's present in all of those buyers, the ability to what we call delay, gratify. Repeat after me, delay, gratify. Yeah, see that? Y'all wasn't all into it. Let's try one more time. Delay, gratify. Okay. That's the theme that I've seen among all of the people that have purchased from me, that it means the ability to have money and still not use it, right? I got $100,000 in my bank account, maybe not, maybe 25,000, but I ain't gonna go away and make this trip because they're stressing me out on the job, right? And so do you have the ability to do that? It's the theme that we've seen from people that buy. Do you think that's important?
Very important. I was just gonna ask you to even break that down even further. What do we mean by delayed gratification? Matt, tell them, please.
Put me on the spot. Yeah, look at you. So again, it means that you need to have one of the reasons why we thought the union should be here. We got a union here, right, Sherelle? Yeah, is because we think that one of the strategies that you could do is most of your salary that does not go to what we call discretionary income, that should be going in an account you can't touch. It's one of the hardest things for me to have that money there. And Wendy's just seem like an arm stretch away once you got that card. If I have to go to the ATM to pay someone, that additional obstacle makes it a little bit more challenging, right? And so if you have put your money that you want to save on accounts that you do not touch, it's going to put you in a position now to be more disciplined. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. Guys, one of the things that we're going to be preaching here today is you need to get your team tight. And when we did this event before, we called the team that we're going to bring up for you the Avengers, right? And if we're the Avengers, I always say that the real estate agent has to be who? Tony Stark. Got to be Iron Man, right? And so what you need to do is you need to be able to call a Inga, a Dakira, a Mingo, a Latura. Use this opportunity to say, hey, good presentation, let me get your card. Right? There are going to be some attorneys here. There's going to be a financial planner here, right? Some contractors are in the room, right? Get these contacts because the importance of you being successful, and one of my clients that are here now, she knows that all the headaches we've been through, the only way we're making it through is because the team is tight. The attorney on board, the attorney is efficient. The real estate agent, he is one of the best on the country. That's me. And so you have to make sure that you have the right team. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So make sure that you use this event to shake hands, to meet people, get out your comfort zone and said, hey, let me get your contact so that we can stay in touch. Yeah? Absolutely. Any thoughts in closing, Inga?
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Let us help you to get there. Know what your market is. Be pre-qualified. That's what my lovely team to the left is here to do. Very seasoned, very excited to allow you to understand what are you qualified for. So when you go to One Oak, Matt and team, you know what market you're in. You're not guessing. You're not getting frustrated. And then you come back to us and we walk you through the steps, one-stop shop from beginning to home, actually you're moving in. It's that simple. And believe it or not, guys, that's what we're here for. We want to see all of you build wealth. Home ownership is key. And if you're not quite ready, we tell you how you get there.
So much for having me here. It's a pleasure. By extension, I could say I'm an honorary member of the One Oak family. And I have to say, a present good afternoon to my good friend, Mrs. Sweeting over there as well. But let's get into it. So my name is Nathaniel Butler. I represent Druber Solutions. We focus on more so the financial literacy inside the country. I want to ask you a question. How many of you ever had financial literacy training in your life? I'm talking about in a formal sense. Anybody? All right.
2 hands.
Couple. All right. Majority of the room, their hands are down. And that's the reality here in the Bahamas. We are not really taught how to handle our money. That's just a reality. In addition to that, you graduate and then you get into the workforce and then somebody will tell you, hey man, you need to go get that loan. You go get the loan, you get the credit card, and when you look, boom, you in deep debt. And then there's that desire, because one of the things that we focus on here in the Bahamas is a part of the Bahamian dream. Most people define it as owning a piece of the rock. you now, through financial decisions and consequences in your life, now disqualify yourself from being eligible to get a piece of the rock, simply because of one thing. And the one thing is knowledge. I believe inside here, and we have a couple financial institutions inside here, and they could correct me if I'm wrong, all of them want to assist you. We have this idea that these financial institutions don't want you to own a piece of the rock. Makes no sense, because at the end of the day, if they don't want you to do it, they won't have business. They want to lend money. Matter of fact, many of the banks here in this country have so much money they want to lend. They just have to be careful to make sure that they are qualified persons that they can lend it to. And the same thing with the other financial institutions, such as credit unions. They want to lend as well. They want to be a part of the business as well. But it starts with us. And it starts with that one thing I was talking about, knowledge. So what do you need to know as the starting part or the foundation of this whole process of buying a home? Well, several things. I want you to know at the end of the day that this is almost like a date. You're dating, trying to find out who you want to be a part, and like Matt said, of your team. You need several persons in the real estate transaction process. And the first group of persons that you should have, and this is the least group sought out in the Bahamas in the financial literacy process, is who is going to be a part of your team to help you with planning your money. Most persons in the country really get most of their financial planning information from the better mortgage loan officers. They will say, okay, you don't fully understand this process. Let me explain it to you. This is this and that is that. But if you're getting that information at that stage, it's a little bit too late. Because the problem is, you'll find when you sit in front of most of them, either you qualify or you don't. And one of the challenges here in this country is the fact that when you sit before them, you're like about 30, 35, and your chances of owning a home get slimmer and slimmer as you get older and older. Because they're looking at what we call, what we define as bankable years. How much years you have left before you reach the age of retirement. We need that 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 years. And so we can't mismanage the money during that time. But like I said, ain't nobody showed us, ain't nobody told us. So this is what I want you to do. The first thing you want to look at is you're going to be judged. You're going to be judged when you sit in front of these institutions, and you're going to be judged on, I would say, 7 things, but we're going to keep it as simple as we're going to keep it to about 4 things. 4 things I want you to look at. 4 basic things I want you to think of. The first thing they're going to judge you on is what we refer to as your character. Yep, your character. They're going to sit down and they want to know how long you've been working where you say you've been working. They want to know at the end of the day how much money you've been generating. They want to know how good you are in regards to paying your bills. They also want to know what your credit score is. They want to know every aspect of your character. And to tell you the truth, if you really want to know somebody's character, only 2 things you have to look at: their bank statements and how they spend their time. If you want to know anything about anybody, look at the bank statements and how they spend their time. The next thing that I want to look at is your capacity, your ability to pay back this loan. And what is considered a part of the capacity? Well, first and foremost, the most primary tool to build any form of wealth in this country will always be your income. You got to guide that, because even though we have accessibility to so many different forms of loans, at the end of the day, let's be truthful, do we really need all of them? And for us who may have utilized some of them, can we point to something positive that we use or got from it? Now, let's use our primary income tool to get property, to get houses, or more importantly, as mentioned earlier, let's get some income generating property. Because to tell you the truth, there's no secret in regards to being a millionaire. 90% plus millionaires around the world did it through real estate. It's no secret. And you can do it. And the beautiful thing here in the Bahamas is we have 3 of the biggest markets in the world. We got a good booming commercial market. We have a good long-term market if you put it in the right location in the Bahamas. We have a housing crisis in certain places. And then last but not least, we have a good Airbnb market. So you can win. There's opportunities there. But once again, I say all of this because you have to protect your income. So in protecting your income, you got to first and foremost do everything in your power to get it to its highest level, meaning that you have to invest in yourself. You got to increase your income. Do things to get your income up. In addition to that, for some of you, side hustles. For some of you, part-time businesses. Do everything you can to get sufficient amount of income so that when they look at it, and reliable income at that, so when they look at it, they can say, okay, you qualify. But at the same time, in all of that income that you're getting, make sure that half, not even more than half, I would say no more than 30 to 40%, that cannot go towards bad debt. Debt that is not helping you to get further in your dreams and your life. You need to make sure that that's free up so you can get that home, for you to get that investment property. And then the big one, the big question of all, the collateral, what you bring into the table. Now, the savings rate in this country is very difficult, because like I said, without financial literacy, you really don't see the need to save. Until you get to the bank and you realize, no, they want you to have a down payment. In addition to that, you got to pay the attorney. In addition to that, you have to pay what we refer to as closing costs, and all of that will be taught later on. And that got to come from you. And most people, when they sit before the banker or sometimes sit before the real estate agent, they're discovering this for the first time. How many of you discovered that for the first time in talking to a real estate agent or a banker? So that means now we need to put ourselves in a position. Some banks, the traditional bank in the Bahamas, will ask you for 10%. Some of them will even go to 15%. And I'm now hearing some of the traditional banks are asking all the way up to 20%. 20% of the down payment. This is real. Now, of course, I ain't talking to my people to the left. They're a little special, they're a little different, And you know what they're looking for? Anybody know? So we shouldn't be having no confusion on where we need to park or link ourselves with, right? We need to make sure we see these people over here. And that 5% ain't gonna change when you walk out this door, even though you're gonna be walking out the door with the qualified letter. But anyhow, let me leave that alone. I'll leave that alone. But you need the down payment money. Most attorneys in this country will charge you between 2% to 2.5%. They can't go above that because of law. And then, of course, you got to factor in the real estate agents and their fee. Vacant land is one price, and an improved property is another price. So as you start to add up the percentages, you somewhere get between 17% and you could go all the way up to 20%. It all depends on who your team is, your team of Avengers. But at the end of the day, I would advise, you see ONEOK, I would advise you see CIBC, and then you could kind of bring that percentage down. You guys following me so far? All right. In addition to that, we have to make sure that at the end of the day, if you're going to make this kind of level of investment, we got to insure it. You got to insure it. You don't want to get this investment and you don't insure it. And plus, the financial institution will give you all that money to go build something and it is not insured. And last but not least, and I must say this too, because this is the biggest, I can't even describe it. One of the oldest tax in this country is real property tax. It didn't just come on stream just recently. It's been around for quite some time. So when you build that mansion and you build that 3-plex, 4-plex, whatever amount of plexes you want to build, just consider the fact that you're going to pay some taxes on the top of that. Be mindful of that. Don't duck it. Don't dodge it. Because at the end of the day, this is how the government is able to cover its bills. You guys following me so far? Yeah. So most important thing, character. You got to make sure that you have a track record before you sit before the bank. Number two, you got to make sure you have the capacity to afford what you want. I always tell people, find out what you qualify for before you start driving around trying to figure out where you want to live. Because a lot of people could only afford Pinewood, but they want to live West Ridge. That's just a reality. You get what I'm saying? And no one of the Avengers want to burst your bubble except me. because I'm the one who have to deal with the reality. I'm the one who have to tell you, for most persons are not even aware, most people in this room are not even aware of what their income is. I'm talking about take home. They know what they make annually, but what do you take home? And then I'll go a step further and say, most people don't know how much they spend on a monthly basis. You see where the problem starts? I'm not here to beat anybody down. I'm just saying that let's get that fixed first. And as we get that fixed, and as we have a picture of that home ownership in front of us, and as we start to save and save and save and assemble the vengeance and have meetings like this and participate in stuff like this and shake some hands and get to meet some people, you're now putting yourself in the position that when you find a dream home, you could afford the dream home, you can make a deal on the dream home, instead of some parts of the puzzle is missing and somebody have to try help fix it. And you barely making it. And then one external factor or event happen in the country, it could be taken. The last point I want to make to you is this: when you get your collateral, when you get that sums of money, and you give that to the financial institution who's going to help you achieve your financial dreams, I want you to consider this, and this is a big one. For me, being a financial planner, and to tell you a little bit about myself, I deal with taxes, I deal with insurance, I deal with mortgage lending from a brokerage standpoint. I deal with advisement and helping persons with investment. But the one area in my life that I deal with and I find that is a struggle here in the Bahamas, and it's a big one, estate planning. Don't get this asset and don't write a will. Because at the end of the day, you will cause the greatest level nuclear fight in your family. First, you don't leave no money to bury you. That's the first fight. And then the second fight will be who's going to own this home. And that's when everybody who never checked for you when you was alive will show up when you pass to see how they could acquire this home. And they'll tell good stories how we was good friends and how you was telling me that I should give it to you and that kind of thing. So in this entire process, when we look at it, let's look at it from start to finish. Let's look at us owning the home, but more importantly, after we own this home, how we can pass this on when we pass on. You guys understand me? I appreciate all of you. I thank you. But the most important thing I would say is this: get the knowledge. Most of the agents, with the exception of myself, the advice that they will provide you is free. I tell any lie? The real estate agents will give you free advice. The people over there and yours give what? Free advice. The people over there and yours give what? But ask how many of them who's lying up and get the advice for free. Nobody, not much. They have family members who need the advice and they don't even see them. Let's don't be the typical behemoth. Let's get the knowledge, let's get the power. And the most important thing I would say this too, the big secret inside the country. I gotta tell you the secret before I go. Gotta tell you the secret. Now, most people in the country will go to traditional banks to get funding. And sometimes you don't fall in that category. And you're trying to figure out, where can I go to get funding? Believe it or not, there are three communities. You got affordable homes, mid-tier, and of course, we're talking affluent, right? You know where you're at. But there's a community of persons who say, man, it's hard, it's a struggle. I don't qualify to a lot of these places. But there's one place that would take a chance on you. I mean, of course, you still got to do the things I'm saying you got to do. That's not an exception. But make sure, consider, if you get no from the different places, consider the Mortgage Corp. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you guys.
My name is Carlisle Bethel, and it is a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. I want to thank Matt, Sherelle is bringing up my block set here. And as you all can see, I love Legos. I want to take the time to recognize the minister as well, and just say briefly that the minister, what I think, has done a phenomenal job in making housing and the availability of housing for Bahamians a core pillar of her term so far, and I think she deserves a round of applause for that. So I want to know, by a show of hands, how many people has received the following advice? They tell you to go to school, get a degree. They say, get a job, buy and build some apartments, live in one, rent one, and it pay off itself. Anybody heard that before? Ever got that before? So I used to get that from my mommy. She was a loan officer for about 30 years. And that's where my initial love and interest in banking came around. And so in doing this, I was asked to speak about crowdfunding and how crowdfunding can assist us. Now, what our parents sometimes forget when they give us that behavior and investing advice, when they say go to school, buy apartments, rent it off, and let it pay for itself, is that they forget that that's a little difficult to do. They make it seem a little easier than it is. So I found that in doing my investment advisory work, there's a way we can make that a little simpler for everybody. Because guess what? Your parents aren't wrong. That's good investment advice. That's very good investment advice. Behavior in real estate is really top of the charts. And how do I say that? So I've been in wealth management and investment advisory for about 10 years. And over that time, I've worked in back office, middle office, front office, and multiple financial institutions, including these wonderful people to the left over here. In fact, that's where I first got my start in wealth management and banking, was at CIBC. So shout out to them. They are one of the better banks in this country. So one thing I've realized, and please, this is not investment advice. Please don't take this as investment advice. Go to Druba for the investment advice. I'm not up here to give investment advice at this particular point in time. What I'm here to do is to expand the thinking when we approach real estate and to show that we have options. We have options. And so when we speak about the difficulty in real estate, there's some barriers to entry that we have in real estate. Now, some of those barriers to entry is that it costs a lot. It's expensive. One is that it's risky. A lot can go wrong. You could find a bad contractor, you take your down payment and run with it, finish someone else's project. You got some real estate agents, may not be as good as our guy, Matt here. When it comes to the management of it, dealing with tenants, there's a lot of risk involved with it. And that's why banks are so big on risk reduction, because they know all these risks. And sometimes we don't calculate them into the valuation of what we're looking for. So what we have here are three different people. We have three people, and then we'll add a fourth. These three people who I like to consider. We have someone over here, let's call her Sally. Sally is pretty good off. She got a maid in the shade. She got gifted a nice Range Rover, where she drives. She has her apartment. She has it all set up. Sally has a nice job. She's doing well. How many Sallys we got in the room? I don't see much Sallys in the room. Okay, that's fine. Sally has a nice stable income. She's making some money. Over here, we got John. John just started working about 2-3 years ago. Took out his money, got some consumer loans, got himself a nice BMW. It's broken down, the wheel ain't on the car. It parked up. John also started his journey and made some investments into ownership and land ownership. But things are a little tough for John right now because he's trying to deal with this car and trying to find some way to finish his housing. So his money a little low right now. He got about 2 of them. And then we have over here, Brittany. Brittany over here, Brittany is doing pretty well. She just closed her home. She's finished up. She's doing well for herself, and she's trying to figure out what could I do next. Any Brittany's in the room? We got any Johns in the room? I forget to ask that. Ain't no shame in your game. That's fine. So Brittany's there. And then we got over here, we got Ashley. Ashley's just starting out. Ashley, she followed her mother's instructions. She got her education, did well, and she's starting out. She has some money saved up, trying to figure out what to do. How many Ashleys we got in the room? This is here. We're trying to figure out what we want to do next. We got our resources. We building it. We planning it. We're trying to figure out how best we use this. All of these individuals have some liquid cash, but not enough to qualify for a loan. There's some hurdles you got to jump, some things you got to do. They don't necessarily have it, but they all want to invest their money in some particular way. This brings us to crowdfunding. Which brings us to crowdfunding. And so Matt had asked me to speak about financial technology, but clearly I prefer to speak about Legos. Because I like to break things down a little simpler. I like to break it down to at a much lower and easier understandable. I always say explain things to me like I'm 5. And so crowdfunding is essentially when a group of people pool their money together and invest in something common. I'll give you 2 good examples of it. One is GoFundMe. Everybody know about GoFundMe? Someone has a medical expense, someone is sick, they don't have all the funds themselves. They start up a page and they raise funds for that medical expense, for that particular fundraise. And everybody can pitch in money. So when Matt asked me to speak about financial technology, I thought I'd speak about financial development and the way that the industry is evolving. And we could apply that same investment philosophy and group investing that we do with GoFundMe and ASUS and apply them to real estate. We all want real estate, right? Everybody want real estate, just raise your hand. I want a piece of, they say you want to own a piece of land, want a piece of ownership. But there's different ways you could do it. There's different ways you can do it. And so what we have here is we have here, so we decided all of these individuals want to build an investment unit. They want to build investment property. So we have an initiative that started. She puts in her 3. He puts in his 2. This fella, he's struggling. He decided he can sell his car. Because that's what Druba can tell him to do. He can say, buddy, sell the BMW and get yourself a Swift, eh? He decided he can sell his car. He sell it for 2 of them. He put in 2. And now she puts in 3. So they have now invested this money. And this particular entity here, which is a company, a holding company, inclusive of all these individuals as shareholders, now have the funds to build themselves a unit. They now have the funds to build themselves a rental property, to purchase a rental property, because they have collaborated. And I want to speak about that process of collaboration because what happens is once this property earns money, they've put their money to work. So now they make money every month on the rent of that property. As it increases in value, they make money every month from the appreciation in the asset. And after a while, our brother here, who's on Struggle Road, have the money to finish up his apartment, and he's turned his life now, and he has himself a productive asset. They all share in the ownership of it, and they all have ownership in land, and they all share from the benefit of this particular investment. So that's how it works. But a key part of that, and this is where ministers and policies come into place, because this whole process has to be regulated, right? The beauty of going to a Matt Sweeting and a One Oak and a Druba and a CIBC and a credit union is that they're all regulated. Now, before you give your money to anybody, you want to make sure that they are a regulated and approved individual and company. Because what it does, in the same way you see in the food and beverage industry, you have health inspectors. You have I used to own a restaurant and bar. They come in, they check the kitchen out, they check your stove, they check your make sure the place is clean, they make sure you clean up, make sure it's safe. They give you all the parameters to operate to make sure that we are safe and you are safe. That's what the Securities Commission is for. That's what they do. That's what our regulators do. And so what they have done, and you can check it out, it's called the SI Business Capital Rules 2021. And what those rules outline, they outline the procedures and the process for crowdfunding legally, responsibly, and sustainably in the country. And so what that has done is it's opened up a brand new way for us as Bahamians to pool our money, to pool our resources, to pool our interests. And we work towards ownership together. And instead of you having to eat the elephant whole, you can bite it piece. So what I want to leave you with today is that the investment journey is difficult and it's long. It ain't much ways to pretty it up. It takes some sacrifice. Ownership requires sacrifice. But we all in different walks of life, different journeys through the ups and downs of life, the twists and turns of fate, but we all kind of have a common goal. And so if we can find ways, as Matt said, the Avengers, to put together a team of like-minded individuals, and you can pool your money, pool your resources, pool your ideas to make these things a little easier. And so what I want to encourage you with, as you continue on this path, and I think this is a wonderful first step, is that income and real estate investing can be easy if you do it together and you have your good guidance. But what I like to see and what makes me happy is to know that we are taking steps and we are doing things to make real estate more accessible. I call it real estate for all, because that's what it should be about. And some choose to go on this journey alone. Some choose to go it alone and do it themselves, and you have all the right to do that. And then some decide they want to find assistance on the journey. For those who want to know more about crowdfunding, about real estate crowdfunding, I'll be here for the rest of the evening. You can approach me at any time to discuss it. I can point you to other places where you can find more information about it. And with that being said, I want to thank you all. I want to thank you, Matt. I want to encourage everybody, and I hope you all wish the best on your journeys to ownership. Thank you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Sherelle, for that wonderful welcome and introduction. Thank you, Halal, for your very encouraging words. You know, me and your dad are good friends. We battled it out in the Senate, but a few weeks ago, we were having a good chat and a few drinks in the backyard at your home. So, you know, we're different sides, but we all respect each other. So thank you once again. With protocol having been established, I just want to welcome my mom. She's visiting. She lives in Turks and Caicos, and so she loves to live in the life of Chobeth when she's visiting me. So she goes to every event she can with me. So thank you, Mom, for being here with me. Protocol being established, I want to thank Matt Sweeting for the invitation to speak at this important empowerment event, and I think it's extremely important now. One Oak Bahamas and the founder, I think this is a great event to put on for persons to get into real estate. Anytime you do it is important. So whether you're young or old, getting into real estate is very, very helpful to your wealth management. It is often said that names and titles are important, and there's so much in a name. So the title of today's conference, Owning 23, says it all. In 2023, we're all about ownership. So at this time, I want you to find someone. Stand up, stand up. I like to exercise people. Stand up, stand up, stand up. And I want you to find one person, not someone you with, or if you're sitting next to them, not that person. I want you to turn to them and tell them, in 2023, I'm going to be an owner. Yes, yes. See, you have to speak these things, right? You can be seated now. But I come from the church. I know what it is, the power of the tongue. So I like to encourage people to speak these things, even if you don't see it. You just speak it, you just say it, put it in the atmosphere, and then don't discourage yourself and don't allow others to discourage you. So that's a good start at becoming an owner, speaking it into the atmosphere. So what is ownership? Ownership is the state or fact of legal possession and control over property, which may be any asset, tangible or intangible. Today's conference is about expanding the path to home ownership, owning a piece of the Bahamian rock. And it's an exciting feeling to own a piece of our home. For many people, owning a home represents the stability, independence, and freedom of reaching adulthood. Real estate is considered by many to be a sound investment that offers unique wealth building opportunities. Buying a home expands options for the future. Whether you plan to sell or make a profit or leverage the equity in your home to pay for another major expense. People usually buy real estate to build a company, to build a business, because they could use the equity in that real estate to leverage it to the bank. So there's so many options when you become a real estate owner, investor. Buying a home expands your options for the future. I'm advised that many of the participants of this session are first-time homeowners. And like any big project, a successful home buying experience is all about getting the details right from start to finish. And listen to me, getting it right is so important to save you money. Very, very, very important to get it right when you're buying real estate. So take the advice from Butler, take the advice from Bethel and anyone else who come up here and try to give you that advice. Take it, ask questions, make notes, because the investment is a big deal. But if you go wrong, it may set you back some years. So I'm going to give you some tips today. You may have heard them already, but it'll still help to reiterate. First tip, start saving early. Start saving early. Set aside your money for down payment, closing costs, move-in expenses. People forget move-in expenses. That's why you see some people have beautiful homes. And then you go inside and you're like, okay, well, where the furniture, baby? Move-in expenses is just as important. You want to enjoy your home, right? So some lenders require 5% down, 10%, 20%. For example, 5% down on 200,000 home is 10,000. So you set your goal and save towards that. Closing costs are the fees and expenses such as legal fees you pay to finalize your mortgage, and the typical range from 2% to whatever amount they determine. And so you want to make sure you save enough cash after the home purchase for insurance, for some repairs or upgrades, furnitures. So if you're getting a government home, some of our people who I've met along the way of my journey, when we give them their lot assignment letter, they like to go to the lot and they begin to torment my contractors. They say, yeah, that's my house. Don't do that. I don't want you to put that there. No, fix that there. And I have to call them in, and I say, you're buying this home from Department of Housing, and we've already entered into a contract with our contractor to build it this way. Once you purchase it, you can make whatever change you want at your expense, but you're getting it on a budget because this is the design that we can afford. So please stop telling the contractor, don't put the Formica on the counter. That's what we can afford. Now, when you get in, you can put your quartz and your granite and all the other stuff that you want, but the government can't afford that. So that is why saving is important. It isn't just saying, I have my 5% for the bank. Yes, you want to have that. And even after you have that, then you begin saying, okay, me and the bank working things out. I gave them my 5%. Let me start working towards saving for everything else, closing costs and my moving expense. So always guide and pace yourself. Decide how much mortgage you can afford. This is tip number 2. Now, sometimes your life expenses can tell you that. You don't really have to decide that. What you have on your bank account and what your take home is, not what you make, not what you make. You know how many persons I've had come and tell me, man, Minister, I'm making like $3,500 a month. I say, wow, so much just come out of that a month. Well, I have, there's takeout for this. And then I have 1 or 2 small loans. And then I have this is expensive. See, then that means that chops down what your real income is for us to look at and see what we could deduct from to give you a mortgage. And so you really don't have $3,500 accessible for the bank to say, okay, you could afford a $1,500 mortgage. You may have $2,000. And so now they have to look at, will you be able to live a comfortable life after they have taken out your mortgage? So it's important for you to bear in mind, even though you have this salary, what is deducted cannot be accessible to your mortgager. And so, 2, how much mortgage you can afford is important. Living within your means is so important. It's not hard to build the life that you want, but sometimes we got to start small. My parents' first home, I was 2 years old, was in Elizabeth Estates. I lived right on Commonwealth Boulevard. And I say that proudly because they got that home under 30. They were under 30 years old when they got their first home. And so they were able to build towards a life that kind of gave me the opportunity to have what I had. Planning is important. Knowing what you can afford and living in your means at an early age helps you to live a wealthier life in your prime years, when your children done move out and you don't have to worry about them and you can travel. Explore mortgage options. That's tip number 3. So that we speak about different finances, different funding now. I'll tell you, I got my mortgage with FCIB Bank. So, I kind of feel biased, but it was a really good process. It was really smooth. I don't want to boost them up too much. But me and my husband, young married couple, and I think their officer did an excellent job. My person is right there, seated there. Stand. So he dealt with me and my husband very well and managed the process of construction. And I was pregnant. So having a banker that actually cares about you getting in your home and your contractor being responsible with the funds, that was important, especially at that time. So explore mortgage options simply because you may not have everything someone else is asking for. You may not have all the down payment. You may not have, they may add some extra stuff on, and you don't want to be thinking that's your only option. So don't allow the process to cause you stress. There are options. You have people here that you can speak to now who can tell you more about your options. Explore them. This is a big investment. Don't be competing with no friend or no family. Take your time. Get the information you need. Exploring your options helps you to save, not spend. It helps you to save. Compare mortgage rates. Compare them. And then is it fixed? Or if it ain't fixed, all of these things matter because you may be at a place financially today, and then it may change in 2 years, in 5 years. You don't know what your situation may be. You want to be a little bit comfortable with who's providing you with that mortgage and how their rates fluctuate, or is it fixed over the full term of your mortgage? If you can make some adjustments, you want to learn these things about who you intend to be financing with. So your principal payments allow you to reduce your mortgage balance quicker. And that is something that I'm beginning to activate, making payments to the principal, and you get your mortgage. Yes, they tell you $1,200, $1,500 a month automatically deducted from your account. That doesn't stop you from going into the bank and putting $200 or $300 or $500 just to the principal. Make sure you say that now when you go and say, to the principal, make this payment. And that'll help you to chop down your mortgage. So compare mortgage rates and fees is tip number 4. Tip number 5, get a pre-approval letter. A mortgage pre-approval is a lender's offer to loan you a certain amount under specific terms. So having a pre-approval letter shows home sellers, real estate agents, that you're a serious buyer. They kind of respect that because you've done your homework already. You sat with a bank, you sat with a mortgager and you said, this is what I have. Please help me and guide me. What can you do for me? What amount can I get? And the government under the housing component have been working with the mortgage court because that falls under our portfolio. And if you are intending to be a homeowner through the government affordable home program, the process does require you to have a pre-approval letter. That's a part of the application process. And you can bring it from any bank. Some persons prefer to go to the mortgage corp. It's not a requirement. If you bank with FCIB or whomever, you can go to them and tell them you are considering to purchase a home from the government housing program, and you need a pre-approval letter because that has to be uploaded with your application to purchase a home. That just helps us to make sure that we place you in a category that you can afford. If you are coming with application, we had some persons that came last year with pre-approval letters for 100,000, and it kind of didn't put them in a category to be a homeowner, but it helped us to guide them to what else they needed to do to bring their mortgage up. So some of them needed to do consolidations. So you can do consolidations of other debts that you may have. That helps to bring your monthly payments down on those particular loans. And then you have more disposable income that the bank can access. And so it helps you to know where you are, even if it isn't the amount that is required for the home you're looking at. You can begin to plan and organize your finances so you can get yourself there. And so getting a pre-approval letter is very important. I want to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing at the Department of Housing. I know some persons may be interested in a home at housing. If you're not, it's okay. I won't feel insulted, but I do want to say that we are building some very beautiful first-time homes for people. And you don't have to think it's only where I'm going to live for the rest of my life. It can be a first initial investment to help you to begin to structure your life, to plan your finances, and to become a little bit more responsible. And so we have created a customer service unit that is very, very friendly, helpful. If they're not, you report them to me, because that's where they should be. Persons can go into the Department of Housing and inquire of becoming a homeowner, or you can go on our website, www.mothbahamas.com, and create your home ownership profile. And on that profile, we request of you your ID, so passport, NIB card. Then we ask for a job letter. A job letter is extremely important. But if you are self-employed, once you have your company information profile, and then you're able to bring your finance in a letter from your bank to say you've been in a banking relationship with them for this period, so it can see that this company has been continuously making deposits, that is accepted as well. So I don't want to deter any self-employed entrepreneurs. We work on those standards as well. If you have been consistent and your business is doing well enough for you to give yourself a salary, we respect that, we trust that, and we also want to support you. And then your pre-approval letter is required. Pre-approval letter is required because, like I said, we want to make sure that if we're selling a home for 160, you have a pre-approval for 140, then we can tell you maybe we can help you get to the point where you can afford the 160, or then we give you other options that is less than the 140 or in the category of the 140 where you're pre-approved. So we try to assist as best as you can. So the Department of Housing is currently building in a number of places. We have Pinecrest subdivision, that is South Beach. That was the first phase was phase 1. That was 40 homes. All 40 of those homes was sold out. And we're entering into our phase 2. All of those homes, Pinecrest, were 3-bedroom, 2-bath, very nice, cute. They had about 3 different designs. The designs were different based on the entry. So some had a porch, some had just a little walk up. My favorite was the tamarind one because it had almost like a little sit out area that you could put little chairs on the porch. You know how back in the days, you used to be outside and say hi to your neighbors as you pass in. The school children used to have a little bit more respect. They couldn't say those bad words because they'd see someone on the outside on the porch who could tell their parents. Well, that's the porch I like. So that tamarind design is the one I like. And then we're building at the Carmichael Renaissance at Carmichael. So we have about 200 homes that will be going into the first phase at the Renaissance. We have over 3,000 applications presently that we're processing. And so I am trying my endeavor best to find more land, to build more homes. And one of the things I'll tell you, persons have said to us who came in interested to buy a home, they do not want the horror stories that they've heard. You do have some persons that have lived some horror stories building their own home because of dishonest contractors or maybe misuse of funds, and it has caused people a great setback. And so we have a lot of persons that can afford to go to the bank, buy and build, but they are trying to squeeze into the program simply because they don't want those horror stories. So your research part of this initiative is very important simply because you may not have the horror stories and you can avoid it by just researching and making sure you check backgrounds. But that's why we have 3,000 applications and counting. And we have homes going up in Abaco and Central Pines and Spring City. And then we also have some in Ocean Hole, Eleuthera. We have about 7 that has the roofs on in Ocean Hole, Eleuthera. So we're excited about being ready to give the keys away for those. And we're looking at more subdivisions, growth in New Providence, and acquiring some land from the Port Authority in Grand Bahama, because where persons want to live it doesn't fall in the category of the inventory that we have. So we have also been focusing on financial literacy. And so the Department of Housing will be assisting persons who wish to enter into our rent-to-own program. Now, the rent-to-own program is one where we think it will be probably geared mostly to the family islands, because we have a lot of family islanders who are entrepreneurs, self-employed, and don't really have the long-term relationship with the banks, but they're making good money in their businesses and they're paying $1,500 to $2,000 in rent. And they've been consistently living at the same place for 3 to 5 years. So if they could pay that for rent, they can build towards becoming a homeowner. And the banks take on that equity if over a period of time you've been in this rent-to-own process, paying in on an escrow account, have built your down payment, and they can see the consistency, the on-time relationship you've had. And so this is why we have built the rent-to-own. You won't stay in as a renter. You can decide your term. So the rent-to-own, you can say, I want to pay into the escrow for 9 months, and then I want to transition into my mortgage. If you can afford whatever your down payment amount would be, plus the maintenance fee for 9 months, we won't stop you. You can decide 18 months or 22 months. But within that time, we will be working with you and whatever lender you say you want to take over your mortgage, and guiding the process and ensuring them of the payment history, the relationship, and helping you to get yourself into a mortgage program that will satisfy and suit you. And so that's really all that I had to share with you. Home ownership is beautiful. I have a home with my husband that we've been sharing for many years, and it's really a sigh of relief to know that you're spending that money and you own it. And so I applaud all of you for taking the time on a busy Saturday to be a part of this session, to learn as much and gather as much information as you can so that you can become a homeowner or just buy real estate to invest in any other future business that you wish, and just be able to benefit from owning a piece of this rock. So this year, like we said, 2023 is about ownership. Let's take advantage of the opportunities available to become homeowners by preparing ourselves. Knowledge is key. Have a good day.
Buy now or rent forever, right? And so this is a very interesting conversation, because what's happening in 2023, we're in a different time. And as I look at in the audience at a number of of people who are actively buying with me right now, what has become clear, and that's been indicative of a number of the transactions I've worked with, is that the buyers in this market need to be ready, right? And so not only do you need to come, and I'm getting a lot of feedback, AB. Not only do you need to be prepared for the buying process, you need to be ready to come to a property viewing, ready to make a decision. And oftentimes what happens, especially when I'm showing property, people who I fail to advise on the way to do this properly, is sometimes people are coming to properties and they say, okay, I like it. My Grammy could be off back on the island next week, and I need to bring Grammy by so that Grammy give me her blessing. And by the time you bring Grammy back, property gone, right? Looking at my clients, that has happened to us a couple of times. And so plenty properties that you want, you have to be ready to move right now, because this is a different market that we're in. And it's indicative based on how many days on market properties are staying. Let's go to the first slide. So I'll go through this really quick. And this is based on a case study I did to really help you to appreciate the state of the market, right? And so in short, a couple of years ago, you want me to use this instead? Logistics, okay. Testing. Okay. Maybe about 2021, the Tribune called for a story, and they said, Matt, what do you think is going on in the market? And obviously, because real estate agents don't usually get together and say, hey, what do you think about the market? It was interesting to see the insights from some of my colleagues. So up at the top, C.A. Christie, Gavin Christie, he said that he is in the process of selling 3 islands right now. The market is like it's never been. I was like, wow, look at how life is for some people, right? John Christie from H.C. Christie says that the market is going gangbusters, right? It's the best year in 99 years. That's huge, right? Then I don't know why the reporter said it like this. Meanwhile, what do you mean, meanwhile, Mr. Sweden? Well, why you gotta say it like that? But he says, meanwhile, they selling islands, but meanwhile, Mr. Sweden is saying that it's been the absolute best time in real estate as well. And so again, what we're seeing is an amazing market. Now, it's oftentimes when it is amazing, it's not amazing for everyone, right? And that means that it's becoming extremely hard for buyers to have real success in this market. And the buyers just need to be a little bit more intelligent about the process, right? So you need to be ready to make a decision. You need to be ready to move. Let's go to the next slide. Let me explain the difference between a seller's and buyer's market in as simple as I can. And it's based on supply and demand, right? When demand is high, right, and inventory is low, we call that okay, no problem, a seller's market, right? And when there's a lot of inventory, right, what do we call that? We call it a buyer's market. What do you think we're in right now? Who said that? No, no. No, we're definitely in a seller's market, right? Because demand is high, inventory is low. We won our news with Minister Colby, and she said we are in a housing crisis, right? People can't find homes and they want to, right? We had over 600 registrations for this, which is an indication that people desperately want their own home, right? People tired of living with mommy, right? It's hard to bring a girl home. Where you taking me? Let's go to the next slide. So this case study is going to be very interesting. Because this is looking over a 24-year period, 8 years back and 8 years into the future. What is the reality? A 16A, something like that. What is the reality of the market? And what I think is extremely interesting about this, oftentimes when appraisers, they value property, and anytime you buy a piece of property, the bank is going to say, bring your appraisal. And one of the approaches to value that an appraiser uses is a sales comparison approach, right? And if you were appraising a house in Pinewood, they would say, okay, well, you buying on Cordia Street, let me go over to Bradford Street because a house sold around there. It had a concrete roof as well. It was about the same size. And so they use that to determine if someone's selling a house in Pinewood for 350, there's no way that the house will appraise for that because the house around the corner only sold for 185. Does that make sense? So this case study is interesting because it's an apples to apples comparison, meaning that we're not using a property down the road, around the corner. This is the exact same development. Next slide. So 8 years ago, a community called Venetian West. How many people have ever been in Venetian West before? How many people know of Venetian West? Yeah, almost everyone. 8 years ago, this development came about, and about 200 units. It is hailed, was hailed then, hailed now as one of the best communities under 500,000. It's one of the few communities that has a number of amenities that are very desirous to the young professional, right? We want a pool, we want a clubhouse, we want 24-hour security, things of that nature, right? One of the greater attractions in 2015, it was about 200 units in total. One of the greater attractions to this community was that they were offering in-house financing at the time. Next slide. And so this is a rendering of the second phase that we're going to talk about in a moment. And this is what that building looks like that they've launched in the first phase. Now, Venetian West in its entirety had a medley of units. There were 4 unit types, but this phase 2 that they're launching now is this same building, right? And so next slide. So that's a 4-unit building that looks like this. And it's 991 square feet. And if you add up the covered entry and you add the covered terrace, you got 1350 square feet, right? But let's just focus on the living area, 991. That's, yeah, so it's 2 units down and 2 units up, right? Let's move to the next slide. So here's where we get into the numbers. 8 years ago, I produced a video where I walk people through Venetian West. And this was a screenshot from that old website. I was surprised that it was still up. But anyone see what that price was that I had featured for the Oasis unit? Could you see that? I know it's small. 249,000 in 208. Next slide. So when an appraiser does a valuation, he is asking what is the square footage of the property versus the price? And he uses that to determine what is the price per square foot. What's the price per square foot in 08? $253. Next slide. Then new website. The website has been reimagined. And this is a screenshot now from the website. What's the price now? That's crazy, eh? Let's go to the next slide. Let me show you how crazy that is. And I'll tell you, I don't mean crazy, I mean crazy. 449 at 981. Now what square foot we're at? 457, 8 years later. Next slide. Let's get into the numbers some more. This represents an 80% appreciation over an 8-year period, right? And so this is substantial, and really everyone should be paying attention to this because the global average is around 3 to 4% a year, right? So everybody expected when I did a interview with Eyewitness News, they said, well, Mrs. Sweeten, isn't that what should happen? Shouldn't it go up in price? Absolutely it should. But at 80%? I don't know. Let's move to the next slide. So assuming a 25-year mortgage back in 08, a 249 price point, you would have needed to make approximately $750 per week, $3,000 per month, $40,000 annual, right? That, and even that is ambitious for a lot of people, right? Raise your hand if you make, no, I only joking. I almost had some of y'all just now. Go ahead, next slide. Oh, assuming a 25-year mortgage at 449, you would need to make approximately $1,400 a week, $5,600 a month, and $70,000 annually. That's over 8 years. This is, and again, I'm not hating on it. I plan to sell plenty of units there, but what I'm telling you is that this is essentially a 2-bedroom apartment, right? And that you need to make $70,000. That is an executive, a C-level salary, they call it, to be able to afford Venetian West.
what this clearly says to us, guys, the market is changing and changing quickly. And so those of us in our 30s and 40s and happy for those in your 20s, you need to use your time now. Sabas posted on his social media a couple of while back that this ain't the time to be fake rich, right? A lot of us, we like to dress nice and look nice and be broke. And so we really got to get out of that mindset of just looking the part, and we need to be more being the part. Let's move to the next slide. So if this same 10% per year per trajectory continues into 2031, which is 8 years in the future, the same unit would likely be priced at $800,000, a 2-bedroom condo. Yeah. Now it is unlikely that we'll see that kind of a price adjustment over the next 8 years. But again, it will go up. It definitely will go up. And the question is how much, and will you be able to afford it? Next slide. And so the thought is, well, Matt, is this just isolated to Venetian West, or is there other communities that we're seeing these kind of price points at, right? And we are seeing these considerable price points. And let me note as a disclaimer that single family homes see a lesser appreciation. There's been a tremendous demand in condo development, right? And so this does not reflect single family home prices. But 360 for 1,083 square feet is 332 a square, right? Which is expensive. Next slide. And again, all these slides here are doing is showing you this is not an isolated case. This is not just a one-off, right? Some people will say, I don't drive in the night because one time don't make the whole, right? You get where I'm going with that? This is a theme. This ain't a one-off. $599 for 1172 square feet. That's $511 per square foot. Next slide. $479 for 1198 square feet. That's $399 a square foot. Guys, keep in mind that contractors are building homes at around $150, $120 a square. And so that means that someone making a lot of money. But there are some factors to note here. Construction prices have considerably increased. Building material has considerably increased, right? And so some market dynamics have changed to support that price, but we're in a crazy time. And what is notable as well is that when someone buys at the 449, now appraisers, I talked about this earlier, will now use that for a comp. And so if I sell, whatever it is, if I sell this mic and I say I want $1,000 for this mic, any bidders? And if someone says I'll take it for $1,000 and I go grab the next mic from here, I've now changed the price for the mic. And so some people have already reserved those units at 449. And so that means that number, even though we're seeing some congruency in other condo developments, is now solidified at that price. The scary truth about this is that we need to act now. You need to figure out what your side hustle is, what I can do to make some extra money. If you ain't making $750 to have afforded it in 08, if you couldn't afford the 08 prices, we need to get our act together. And so I thought that was very, very interesting. And I hope that really, really hit home for you to show you the changing dynamics in the Bahamian economy and the fact that we need to buy now or potentially rent forever. Scary. Let's move into another segment where I want to bring up some of my buyers. Come on, join me on the stage, guys. And we want to get their experience, right? I could stay up here all day and talk and share my opinions, but you won't hear it from people who actually did it. So, Anastina Hutchison, Lavenderia Bethel, LaRonda Gibson, Jemiah Cooper, Precious, you waiting on your name, mate. She like, well, Matt, you ain't called me yet. Precious Smith. I must know her name. Okay. And let's fill up the front first, guys. I think we might have a little bit more chairs up here. We was expecting someone husband and he ain't, yeah. Boy. And another scary reality is that the men are being left behind. I mean, I am embarrassed for us. I look into this now. Jeez, where are the men? Yeah. So congratulations, guys. Let's give them a round of applause.
Yeah. So all of these people represent people who bought from me or our company over the last year or two. And so we want to hear their experience. And there's some interesting experiences, right? So Anastasia, why don't we start with you? Tell us your general buying experience. Was it easy? Was it hard? How was it?
Okay, initially it was easy because I had Matt holding my hand straight through from the beginning straight to the end. But as the process was going through, it was a lot of delays. You'll say, when you go to the bank, they'll say, come next week, we'll have your letter ready. That'll take 2 months. Then you go, and when it's time to get your closing, you get a big surprise because when I went to take my down payment, I thought my closing was included in that. So when it was time to close, the credit union tell me you need to go find $10,000. So I say, what? So that was a big surprise to me. So that's one thing I want to share because I automatically thought my down payment covered everything. When I got the house, I took my contractor there, but he didn't inspect it the way he should have. So I got some surprises when I moved in. So that's I would encourage people to get a proper inspector to check the house before you buy it. That's my greatest takeaway from this.
Yeah. And I, just reconnecting with them. Some of us, while we stay in touch, and I'd be watching their status late in the night. We haven't spoken in a few months, and just kind of reconnecting with them. I think one of the themes I take away from a number of them is you have to get a proper inspection done. And again, oftentimes we're pinching pennies trying to make the sales process happen in the first place. And so now to pay for something that you don't need, because you don't need it to get the sale, could be $500, $600, $700. Hey, Nikita, how much could an inspection run you into? Yeah. And so get a proper inspection done. Okay. Precious Smith, my good client. So Precious say, Mr. Sweeten, I hope I ain't calling you too much. I say, no, man. Precious, you got but 80 calls. You got but 80 calls. And then after that, come on now. Precious, tell us about your experience.
I think I still have about 65 left, right?
There's no way. No way.
The experience for me this time was a bit easier. The first time, I learned I was supposed to do a lot of follow-up, but back then, the first time I didn't do it, follow-up. As far as mortgage corporation, the process was easy.
Yeah, okay. No, you're fine. You're doing good. Give her a round of applause. Yeah, and listen, I had to beg these people, some of them, to do it because not everybody likes stage and attention. And so, but I felt that this would be impactful. And so we wanted to share. Go ahead, Precious.
The experience for me, the first time, because I did the process the first time, wasn't a good experience. And I learned that you gotta be a nuisance to people the second time around. You gotta keep calling and you gotta keep checking and make sure it's current. Because when I spoke to Mr. Sweeting, when I put in the offer for the house, it takes about maybe but a couple days to a week. On the second day, you hear back from the people yet? They accepted the offer. No, check me back next week. 2 days later, for me was next week. I checked, did they call? Did they say anything yet? And then when he finally did, going to mortgage corporation, I say, okay, now, you know what happened the first time? You can't do what you did. Just sit down and be relaxed. You gotta be a nuisance to them too. Mortgage corporation got all kind of people. If you ain't know one number, call another number. So I was calling every day, trying to make sure everything was going good. When the process was finished, oh God.
Yeah.
When it was finished, I thought it was the hardest part, but finding tenants is, to be honest with you, the renting process is the most hardest part of my journey.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Precious. Thank you so much. The drama. LaRonda. Oh boy, the drama. I mean, in all of these transactions, again, if you are going to get into a real estate transaction, prepare yourself for drama. Prepare yourself for drama. LaRonda, tell us about the drama that me and you been through.
Okay, so let's start off.
In short, because you, I don't like the answer was like, hold on. Go ahead.
I could go for a very long time. All right, so the lawyer that I had originally decided on for my transaction, once I finally found a house in the market that I was interested in after a 2-year journey, he didn't follow up. He didn't write to the lawyer after I got my nice little say, oh yeah, we'll accept your offer. He didn't do anything. And so I got a notice around December time when I thought I should be, being in good spirits to say, oh, you are.
Hold your mic closer, LaRonda.
You are at risk for forfeiting your deposit. You did not follow up and you did not ask for any extension or anything like that. And so that was almost 10 grand that was just going to go poof. And
and listen, I mean, it didn't almost go poof. It went poof.
It did.
She lost her deposit,
Mhm.
and we had to beg them to re-engage this transaction because we were still working on it. Then you would think we were out of the woods then when we get back in the deal. After we didn't beg them to make this deal happen, we had some other hiccups because what was it then? It was we needed to put in more money.
Yeah, there was more money that was needed, and the bank decided that it was going to implement some new policies. And so the property needed to have its survey markers in place before they were willing to consider, and then they needed to have, I don't know, about 6 other things that just needed more money out of pocket, more money out of pocket, more money out of pocket that was supposed to come at the end just for me to be considered for my application.
Yeah, it was rough. Then she closed on the house. You would think the drama's over. It's not.
It's not.
Oh my.
It's not. I'm not in the house yet. Your contractor is your lifeline. That's the first thing. A proper inspection in the beginning before you make your offer is your second lifeline. So I have some major electrical things that need to get done. It's not a small price at all, which possibly should have gotten caught from the beginning because, our lovely Bahamas is money talks. So it was up to code from afar and on closer inspection, because a wire inspection is needed after 6 months of not being in the property. You find out, oh, they did kung foolery, chicken gunya, and everything else underneath the sun.
Yeah. So in short, she got to put more money into it and pay a mortgage. The mortgage didn't stop.
Nope.
The mortgage didn't stop.
I've been paying my mortgage and I'm not there yet. I've been paying my mortgage religiously.
Yeah. In a house you don't live in. And so some stories. I know, right? Ernestine, like, hold on now, my story wasn't that bad. Jemiah, why don't you tell us your story? Now, me and Jemiah got a story where one time, if anybody saw my videos on TikTok, sometime I go into a scary, what would I call it? The scary repo. And Jemiah and her husband go to see this house one time without me, right? And they get locked in the house. And Jemiah scared. They thought ghost was in the house. No joke. So she called me scared. You can go ahead and finish that story.
So my husband and I were viewing a home that I think we had viewed it before.
Yes.
We were interested in it. We went and we viewed. And while we were upstairs, because, pigeons running in and out, everything scaring us. While we were upstairs, we had the door slam shut downstairs. So I told my husband, I said, let's go downstairs. Let's see what that was. He's like, no, let's finish. Look around. We look around. We get downstairs. We are locked in this creepy, abandoned looking home. Trying to jingle a door. Call Matt. Matt is like, oh, we're going to get there. So my husband and I were stuck in there for about Oh, it felt like forever.
Yeah.
Probably it was only about 15, 20
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Until my husband decided that he was gonna jump through one of the windows that were broken. But then at that time, as he was about to jump through the window, I was panicking. I was like, I don't want you to leave me in here by myself while you go try and open the door. So eventually we got out. Didn't get that home. I was pretty sure that was a sign, but didn't get that home.
Right. So tell us about the home you got, and in short, your experience.
In short, my experience, like I tell Matt, my husband and I, we're so grateful to Matt. We tell him the best part of our experience was him. Everything else was like, I was pretty sure like home ownership wasn't for us. I'm pretty sure someone was behind us, because every time we had decided on a home, we even saw the point, like one time Matt called us on the side, he would say, listen, y'all have the offer in, just make the
Sign
deposit.
off or deposit, yeah.
Deposit.
Mhm.
We stop on the side of the road, we send the monies to the lawyers,
Yes.
and then when we look again, oh, someone came and they bought the house with cash. And this didn't happen once, this didn't happen twice.
Right.
This happened to us about 3 times. So we were certain that, this must be in for us. But eventually, we found a home, loved it. Matt came, reviewed it, made our offer. I was pretty sure they was going to deny our offer because it was so much less than what they wanted. When Matt told us that we had gotten it, we was like a breath of fresh air, because we were doing this process for like a little over 2 years, looking for a home. But little we know that it's just the start.
Oh, it's just the start.
Just the start of it.
Contractor issues as well, and we'll and again, oftentimes I'm making suggestions to people about the professionals you could use, because this is what I do full time, right? And so I know the people who have better reputations than others. I put it like that. And so it is in your best interest to rely on me to give you guidance, right? And when I'm directing you to a bank, to a lender, is because, again, realize that real estate agents only get paid when we close. And so when they talk about these long closures, that means Matt going hungry, gotta wait a minute. I gotta sell plenty scary reports for that to keep coming in. Yeah? Lavendier, tell us your story.
She said it best. The best experience I had was actually with Matt. I think he was very good holding my hand through the process. For me, I got the most fair when deadlines were coming, and I didn't hear back from the bank. I didn't hear back from the person that accepted the offer. I didn't hear back from the lawyer. And I'm like, so Matt, what am I supposed to do? Because my money didn't tie up. Like, what am I gonna do? And I think if it wasn't for him, because the education part, I thought I was ready in terms of funding. I had that part of it, I was ready for. But the actual process of it, I was definitely not ready for, because I'm thinking if I come with my funds, 2 to 3 months, I should be in the place if nobody was there. It wasn't 2 to 3 months. It was about a year. About a year. Yeah. And it was a newly constructed place. So I'm trying to figure out, why would it take so long if the bank said, okay, you got pre-approved. Right. To me, pre-approved means next month, I should be able to get the funding to go into the place. Right. Similar to her 2 days is 2 weeks. Sorry, yeah. 2 days is 2 weeks. Yeah. That was the same thing for me. And so the deadlines, when I read the letter from the buyer, the seller, and they say you have 15 days or else you forfeit. And I'm like, 15 days? You all ain't even write me back. Time about to go. My money, I'm nervous. Yeah. And I think that's the part. If it wasn't for the realtor or even calling, because you got to call a lot of people, you got to follow up a lot, because the saving process for everyone is that journey to saving. That's a death to yourself, number one. And then number two, because it's a big investment, you're also afraid, and you're hoping you're making the right decision for you. And all of that is an emotional journey. It's a trusting journey, because the person that you decide to help you through it, they should be able to comfort you and provide some information. And then also for me, it was learning too, because after I reached roadblocks and I didn't see time, stuff happening on time, I started to read and I was like, okay, now who I could go to? I called my attorney and listen, she was helpful, but I was still like, you want me to come there and do your job for you? Because I think you just taking it long. But overall, I'm grateful for what I ended up with.
Yes.
But the process, I don't think anybody prepared me for what happened along the way. And yeah.
Yeah. So one word of advice from all of you on buyers, future home buyers, on what they could do to be more successful in the process. Who wants to go first?
Know your contractor.
Know your contractor.
Get a proper inspection.
Proper inspection.
Trust the person that you're gonna go with, like a realtor. I say, make sure you have confidence in that person because that with their knowledge, they help you.
Right. Loranda, what you got?
A lot. Pray, most definitely. Pray it all the way. But also piggybacking off of the contractor, if you're not willing to have a trust fall with that contractor, don't go with him.
A trust
Yeah.
fall? What
A
you call
trust
it?
fall.
Mm.
If you
Oh,
can't feel like you could turn your back and you could fall back and they can get you,
yes.
walk away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Walk away.
Yeah. Precious' story was a little bit different. I'm impressed with her contractor's work. Matter of fact, I'm about to post her video today. If you guys have seen a renovation story, the Precious renovation, it's her. We're about to post the final story. She just did a housewarming Thursday, and I missed it. And I saw her.
Congratulations.
And in addition to that, she rented both her units already, tenants already in. And I think we ran the numbers and Precious got like a little payment she need that on to finish up her mortgage payment. So the tenants are essentially paying most of her mortgage. Very exciting.
Thank you.
What we find very interesting is the fact that home ownership is an extremely difficult journey. You guys know that saving money is a difficult journey. And from these people's story, you appreciate that the journey continues, right? Even after the purchase, it is continued. You know, we find it interesting as an agency that when people get appointed as deacon, there's a celebration. You graduate from school, there's a celebration. Someone get pregnant, celebration, right? But nobody celebrates home ownership. And it is one of the most difficult processes in the entire world, right? And so we're instituting something we're going to call the Certified Home Owners Award. One Oak Bahamas is celebrating homeowners. You believe that requires celebration?
So the pre-qualification process is quite simple. All we do is we determine what your income is. So you have to know what your income is. We look at your job letter. We make sure you have stable employment, which is at least 2 years working at an organization. And also, if it's less than 2 years, there are also some exceptions. Like you may be in the same industry and you just moved over to a different place and you were there for 6 years and then you move over and it's less than a year. So there are exceptions in that category. So we take your income, and with that income, we also look at whatever debt you have. So if you have a loan, you have a credit card, or even an existing mortgage, whatever you pay out as a credit facility, we look at that as well. And that's what we use in order to determine what the amount that you would pre-qualify for. Now, just a quick and dirty, let's give a scenario. So like, for instance, let's say you make $2,500 a month and you have a loan that's $500 a month. So in there, you only have about $2,000 that you can work with. At First Caribbean, our ratio is 45%. What that means is all of your debt, your credit card payment, your loan payment, your insurance payment, your mortgage payment cannot exceed 45% of your income. So that's what we use in order to pre-qualify you. So if you have gotten a pre-qualification letter from us to say that you qualified for $150,000 or $200,000, whatever that mortgage amount is, we use that mortgage amount plus whatever debt you have, plus whatever insurance on that property, and that amount cannot exceed 45% of your monthly income.
Right. And Ashquel, is this a letter or is this an email?
We offer
It's not on.
What number you got on your mic there, Ashwell?
2.
Number two.
So I can speak loud enough. We're talking banking. So we offer a letter to our customers. And we also give you an email to say that the letter is ready. So you can come in and collect the letter. If it's more convenient for you to get the letter by email, by all means.
And give her your mic to Kira, because we got Zoom. Thank you, Zoom audience. Wow, we had such big plans for Zoom, and I apologize to our Zoom audience. The first person on Zoom to just ask a personal question, and we got someone watching it right now. When you ask a question, the prize for that person, keep an eye on that. So go ahead, Ashwell.
This is the one that's not. So what I said was we offer a letter to our customers. However, if it's more convenient for you to get that letter via email, we can have that letter emailed to you.
Yeah. And so from the real estate perspective, when a client comes and says, I already have that, it tells me that I'm wasting my time, right? It lets also the seller of the property know that you are serious about the buying process. And it can help you get a better negotiation, help you negotiate better as well. So
one thing, if I can,
go
I'd
ahead.
like to add to what Dakira said. And yes, we do have a 45% threshold, but we want you not to just stick to as close to it as you can. But if you reach that 45% threshold, or you're going a little over that threshold, not give up on the dream of having a home, because we will look at things and we will look at how we can work to assist you with getting it. Okay. So I don't want you to just give up at that point. So most people say, okay, well, if I don't make that $900, if that's the 45%, that this is it for me. No, at CIBC, we look at everything and we look at the entire picture and we see how we could best accommodate you.
Certainly. Yeah, good. Thank you. And you know, we've been sending most, if not all, of our business to First Caribbean, not only because we got some golden girls at First Caribbean, but again, you know, when RBC came and talked to us a few months ago, I said, you know, the reality is the buyers that we work with oftentimes are just making it happen. And so to find 10%, 20% for a transaction is extremely difficult. And so we appreciate First Caribbean for not only participating and joining us in partnership, but also for doing the 5%. Where the money resides. She can get there. She can get there. Give her a second. All right. So Sherelle, what do you got as your next step?
Of the aspect where we want you to work with a real estate agent. And I think it's very important to sensitize the public that when you're working with a real estate agent, select someone that you trust, select someone that you have a good relationship with, someone that's communicating, following up and following through, because you want to have a close enough relationship so that they're supporting you throughout the entire process. It's important for you to know when you're working with someone, don't call 3 and 4 other real estate agents. The reality for all of us is we're going to look in the pool that's going to give us access to every property that's available throughout the length and breadth of the Bahamas. So don't feel like in order for you to find out about a property, you need to call another agent. We are doing this for you free because it's no cost to you. But when you don't allow us to close your deal, we would have worked for you for the last year, 2 years, and we don't get paid from the buyer's side. So a lot of the times, because you don't know, you tend to call another agent. So allow us to work with you if you feel comfortable working with that particular agent. We're going to send you options specific for what it is that you're looking for. And we're going to schedule those showings and viewings, and we're going to walk you through the entire process. One of the things that's important is you want to move quickly when we're walking through that, because you would have noted in the beginning that it is a seller's market. So for you, when something gets listed, it's very possible for that to not be available the following day, as you would have heard from the buyers who already closed on their deals. So yeah, the search, work with a real estate agent that you can have a good relationship with, and we're going to show you all of the listings. So that person has access to that, all right? So the next one is the offer.
The offer, yeah. And so this is what we call a letter of intent. Some people call it a letter of intent. It really spells out the terms. And Chanel, why don't you jump in here and tell us what you're looking for? Because again, this is the first time that the agent and the attorney are now making contact, right? We have an offer letter prepared. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So the offer letter is a snapshot. That's what we call it as lawyers. It's a snapshot of the main
negotiations that Matt would have negotiated on your behalf as a buyer. So it will outline for us what the price of the property is. It will give a short form of the legal description of the property such that it can be identified with some certainty. It will indicate how VAT is going to be split. That's the government tax, how that's going to be split between the parties. Sometimes you may be purchasing on a net basis, meaning that as a purchaser, you will be paying all of the government VAT, but more frequently so, it is usually on a gross basis, which is where each party pays equally the government VAT, right? So if it's 10% VAT, then it's going to be split. Purchaser pays 5% and the vendor pays the other 5%. It will also indicate whether each party is paying their own respective legal fees and associated VAT with the legal fees. And it will indicate a closing date. So closing date may be 60 days, 90 days. Those are really the predominant time periods, especially when financing is involved. And that closing period is really the date from the date that your agreement for sale is signed to the date that you ought to close. And later on, we'll go into how hard and fast those dates really are or not are. It will also indicate whether or not your deal is subject to financing, and it will indicate a time period for that financing to be put in place. The financing time period starts not when you sign the offer letter, but it starts when the agreement for sale has been fully signed by both parties, and that's when the document will be dated. So usual financing periods are 21 days, 30 days. Sometimes you can see it for a longer period than that, but typically it will be around that period.
Yeah. And Chanel, why don't we segue right into what are the costs associated with a real estate transaction? And I'd like to do it running them through the scenario. So if you were to buy a home for $200,000, what's the first consideration, Chanel? What is the first fee that we would need to pay?
Right. So the first thing you're putting down is your deposit.
Right. So 5% of the 200,000 is, who said that? Who said that?
Lady.
Oh, there you are. Okay, you can come when you're ready. All right, so we got 5,000.
Right. Next, you'd want to consider what your legal fees in the transaction are going to be.
Let's talk about that. Because one of the things people don't know is they say lawyers charge too much.
I beg to differ, but okay.
Yeah. Too little. Yeah.
So there's a general guideline for legal fees, and it usually tops out at around 2.5%. But having said that, there are sometimes other ancillary fees depending on the buyer and the buyer's situation. So not every buyer's situation is the same. You have some buyers who are non-Bahamian, which introduces another aspect of having to make certain post-closing applications to the investment authority. There are some buyers who are non-resident and may need central bank approval. So that is another aspect of the transaction, would not be included in standard percentages. But typically your fees will be charged on what we call both sides of the transaction. So there's a conveyancing side, which is equivalent to the purchase side, and then there's the mortgage side. So your conveyancing fee would be based on your purchase price, and your mortgage fee will be based on the loan amount that you are borrowing. And any other ancillaries would just be in addition to that.
Right. And so the 2.5 that people anecdotally mention, they oftentimes say the attorney can charge 2.5. It's 2.5 on 2 services. Mm-hmm. So it could get up to around 5% based on the standard rate. And there are some, if they got to be back and forth and there are additional documents that need copies or this and that, it could be some more.
Yes, so there are what we call disbursements. So office expenses that may be relative to your matter, which will be called miscellaneous expenses, which most firms have sort of like a rolled into one type of minimum fee. And then there's also title search costs, which we'll talk a little bit more in depth about what a title search is. But those are costs that are third-party costs, so to speak. It's a report that's given by a third-party company, which is used by the law firm to pull down documents to investigate title to your property. But that is an additional cost that is associated with that. So for example, when we give our fee quotes, we would give an estimate because, as the history of having done so many matters, we'll have a pretty good estimate of what you're going to be looking at in terms of your disbursement costs.
Right, right. So Zoom, again, we appreciate you for joining. Again, we had a big plan for Zoom, and so what you're seeing is not our intention, but I know you could hear me. I want to address some of the questions here in Zoom, and Zoom did not see the slide presentation. We apologize. I'll send that over to you. One of the questions was, how do you determine a good contractor? And this is my good contractor right here. Nikita Curtis from Eagles Water Development. And if I'm using him, I suggest you use him as well. And when they talk about a trust fall, this is the guy that I'm going to suggest you use to come and look at the property with us. Your bank is going to require how many contractors? So they want 2 quotes from licensed contractors. And so in any event, you need the contacts or the acquaintance of multiple contractors to walk a property with you. So what do you think, Nikita? How do people find a good contractor?
What I suggest, what you do when you're looking for a contractor, I have a motto I always tell people who ask me. If you ask me to start a job for you tomorrow, I can't do it. Good contractors are not available tomorrow. That's the first thing. The next thing is, don't take my word for it. Let me provide you with persons who you can go to who will speak about what I have been able to do. So you have to do that. The final thing for me is everything needs to be documented. Scope of works is very important. Scope of work is very important. A contract between you and your contractor. See, don't let me tell you I can do this and I can do that, and then I can add this on for you and add that on for you. Contractors don't add on for you because they have to buy the materials and they have to pay for the labor men to do that. Yep. So ladies especially, don't fall for that. Anytime a contractor is telling you all these things that he could add on, right? Don't fall for that. That ain't free. Yeah. Because unless he owns the hardware store, the lumber store, and the concrete, right, he can't do that for free. Yep. Put it in writing. Yeah. But one of the most important things is references, live references. Yes. And then when he gives you the reference, call the person. Absolutely. Don't just take the reference that I pulled down off internet and put somebody's name on it. Call the person. Yeah. Go to that person. Certainly, certainly. Here's some other questions. Thanks, Jimmy Kadot, for that question. Patricia Johnson asks, are there any newly built duplexes for sale via the bank? It's interesting that the bank to a large degree, is listing their properties with real estate agents now. And so if you went to oneoakbahamas.com or any real estate agent website for that matter, a number of the properties you're seeing there are actually repossessed properties. But most people know that if you walked into a branch and say, give me a repo list, they'll give it to you, and you could go down that list yourself and see what you're interested in. An anonymous attendee asks, can a vehicle mortgage be consolidated in order to be qualified for a home mortgage?
If it's a purchase, no, it can't be consolidated. But if you have equity, so if you have a property already and now you want to consolidate all of those loans, by all means, we can do a debt consolidation.
Good, good. TYB asks, if you already have a loan at First Caribbean, can that loan be combined with the mortgage loan?
Depending on the type of loan. So it's the same premise.
Okay, good. Zoom, stay tuned. We'll come back to the rest of those questions in a moment. Let's continue the process. So now we have gotten pre-qualified. We have looked for property, right? We have gone on the search and identified properties that are interested to you. You said, Matt, let's make an offer on this. We write up the offer. You sign the offer. The buyer signs the offer. You then meet with Chanel. Say, hey, Chanel, here's my signed offer letter. I'm ready to go. Here's my deposit, because that needs to be placed with you, not with the bank. Some people are kind of confused about that as well. Where do I take this deposit?
Right. So the deposit would come to your attorney's law firm first. We will document that the deposit has been paid, and we will provide evidence of that to your loan officer so that they are aware that you've made your necessary equity injection. After that, we will request from the seller's attorney a draft of the agreement for sale. So if you remember, I indicated that your offer letter is a snapshot. It's a snapshot of what you agreed. The agreement for sale fleshes out that snapshot. It gives real meat on the bones of the agreement for sale. But more so what it does is it governs the timelines and it governs what the seller's attorney has to provide to me as an attorney, looking out for your best interest and the bank's best interest in acquiring this property to make sure that everything is in place. So for example, it will flesh out whether or not there's an inspection that needs to take place prior to closing. It will flesh out whether or not the property that you're purchasing needs to be insured during the time of the purchase. So for example, vacant land would not need to be insured. But if you're purchasing a home, we want to make sure that, for example, if a fire happens during the transaction, that the loss is covered by insurance, so that at the end of the process, when you purchase that property, you're either entitled to the insurance proceeds or that we include what we call kind of a get out clause, that if the damage to the home is more than, for example, 20% of the purchase price, you have the option to say, well, I'm not buying that anymore, because you should not be stuck in a transaction where you were buying a property that was fine, and then you're left with a property that's not fine. Even though you have the money, you now have the stress of having to make it good, right? And then also the bank may not be willing at that point either to take on a property that needs construction or repairs.
Right, right. So she's going to now, Chanel, you get the document in your office because you've requested a draft. You review the document. Call the client in. A lot of legal speak in this.
Yeah.
And so you call them in and you said, hey, this is what this says. Go ahead and read it yourself.
No, 1 second.
Go ahead.
Sorry, before Chanel speaks. And I know we innocently passed over it. So you made an offer, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that offer is going to be accepted. So we have the acceptance part. One of the buyers mentioned that she was at the edge of her seat wondering if they would have even accepted her offer. So once we would have passed the acceptance phase, then you would have the attorney. She mentioned the deposit, and I think we're going to dive into sales agreement now.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'll say is I've been practicing for almost 20 years. And what I can tell you is first-time home buyers have to be handled differently than the person who's been investing and investing and investing for years, because it's a sensitive type of transaction. First-time home buyers are more vulnerable because they're not familiar with all of the terms. Kudos to Matt, because this is the type of environment that people who are looking to purchase, especially first-time home buyers, need to be in, because there are things that you won't know, like the fact that your deposit may be forfeited if you don't get your financing in place within a certain time. And those are the conversations that we have with our first-time home buyers. We have to, and you know, not to make it sound bad, but we handle first-time buyers with kid gloves. We assume that you know nothing. Even after you've done this, we assume that you know nothing. We make sure that we calendarize your financing periods. So if we don't hear from you, we are going to ask for an extension just to make sure that your financing is, your deposit is secured.
And
right?
let's put a pin there, Chanel, because again, when you sign that sales agreement, and we kind of skimmed over this earlier, there are two dates that are important. There's how much time do you have for financing and how much time you have to close. Now, when we talk about in LaRonda's case, this attorney did not calendarize it. And so LaRonda had passed the date for financing. And then what happens? What is assumed?
Then your deposit is at risk. The seller then has the position to say, well, they've gone past the period. The agreement will say that if this period expires and the purchaser fails to let me know in writing that they've not secured financing, that the agreement continues as though the financing has been obtained, or that the clause falls away, which means if you're unable to complete at the closing date and that passes, then the deposit can be forfeited, meaning they take the deposit and you walk away without a property.
Right. How many people could afford to lose 10,000? Come and play for your prize if you could. Nobody. Okay. All right. So that means that you need to be on the ball about those dates. And this is about to come to you right now, because the bank, we waiting on approval. Why approval is take so long, man?
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
So I think it is important to recognize that as a bank, we try to work with you as much as possible to get the necessary documents that is needed in order to get that approval in. Here's the thing.
Most times when you come for a pre-approval letter, we would send you an email with a list of items that you require in order to get the process started. If we send you a list with 10 items and you provide us with 6, we cannot move. If we send you a list with 10 items and you provide us with 9, we cannot move. If you provide us with 9.5, 9.75, we cannot move. So I'd like to encourage, especially first-time homeowners, let's have a conversation. If there's an issue with getting the appraisal, or there's an issue with getting a current pay stub or a job letter, or in the instance of your construction and you have an issue with trying to get those 2 references, or we need to know, because once that clock starts, we can't cut that off. So that 21 days, that goes pretty quickly. So I like to encourage persons, if you know that you're going to put in a deposit, before you even put that deposit in, you've already been pre-qualified. Let's get the process started. Start to give me every single thing on that list so that by the time I get that sales agreement, the only thing I'm waiting on is maybe your appraisal. And once I get that appraisal, I can write that application, send that off for approval, and then we get moving. But a lot of the times we find that persons read the email, they send 5 stuff or 6 stuff or 7 stuff, and then they call us to find out what is the update.
Right.
I mean, I'm still waiting on the other 3 or the other 2.
Right.
We really cannot, we want to send quality applications in order to avoid the back and forth. And I think that is so important. We can't send an application that's half of the information, because it's going to come back. It's going to come back either deferred or declined, and then we have to go back to credit risk to see what we can do. We want to send quality applications so that first thing, we get our approval and then we good to go. So that is so important.
So you're saying 95% of the delay is actually the buyer and the docs they need to produce?
Most times,
okay.
Yes.
So guys, let's get our ducks in order before we even start looking. We need to get the job letters ready, right? What else?
So normally, under normal circumstances, passport, NIB, address verification, job letter, a current pay stub. If you give me a job letter that's 3-4 months ago, I need a current one, because normally it's only within 1 month. We need if you don't bank with CIBC and your salary is going elsewhere, we need a 6-month bank statement from that place. If you have other debt, we need current printouts of those other debt. If it's a credit card, we need a 3-month statement for that credit card. If it's a loan, then we need a printout of the loan. There's also credit bureau. You know, the credit bureau is on board now.
Yes.
So we have to send out for a credit bureau report. We try to make that the last thing, because after 30 days that expires. So that's a cost, $25 plus VAT. So once we send out for that credit bureau report, we get an answer the same day. And once we get that, we're ready to put the application in. But if we're waiting another 30 days for you to provide other stuff, then again, we're on hold.
Right.
So quick question from the audience. So we're always trying to bypass some of those external costs like the appraisal. Is it even necessary to have? Why?
Absolutely. So normally First Caribbean would lend, well, I guess most banks would lend on the lesser of the cost. Meaning, if you have a sales agreement where the purchase price is $250,000 and your appraisal says $200,000, we have to lend on the lesser, which means you have to come up with that additional injection, because we're only going to lend you 95% on the lesser of the cost. We want to know a couple of, well, it's a number of things that we want to know about that building. One, is it complete? Does it require renovations? How much is the depreciation? Any appraisal that says that the depreciation is 30% or more requires renovations. So we then have to have the conversation on whether you're going to do the renovations yourself and your funds to cover the renovations, or we're going to add that to the loan.
And let's mention that, Dakira, I just had a call yesterday. People see a repossessed home for 160, and I always have to have the call because the bank will not do what? The bank ain't gonna let you buy the repo just like that.
No, sir. Especially with repossessed homes, because most times when there's a repossessed home, there is so much damage, and we find a lot of roof damage, which is, I guess the contractor can attest to this. That's mostly the most expensive thing. So when that roof damage is added in there, you find a repossessed property for 160.
But by the time you have to renovate, you have to spend about 70,000. So all of that is included in your cost. 70 plus 160, that's 230,000. So where you were pre-approved for, let's say 150, we have to go back to the drawing board. You may not be able to afford it anymore.
Right, right. Okay. So we appreciate you guys spending time with us, and we know that we're a bit over time. So let's tighten up, Sherelle. Where do we need to go in this conversation from here? So again, let me run you through it. You got pre-qualified. You came to me. We found a property. We signed an offer letter. You then met with Chanel. Now, all of these people you need to be interviewing now, no matter where you are in the process. A number of people that I often talk to are saying, well, I still saving. Meet with Chanel now and her team at Mitre Court, because Chanel is be busy. But Chanel has a team. She runs the firm, and she has a number of qualified and excellent professionals at her firm that can help, right? Meet with here. Hey, just what am I qualified for today? I got my job letter. I still working on the money, but let me know where I stand today, right? If I were you, I think it might be, even if you want to be proactive, every 3 months, get your job letter updated and just have it on file. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. Sherelle, where would you like us to go from here? So now the sales agreement is signed.
So you had your sales agreement, you would have vetted the agreement with the attorney.
Yep.
Then you would look at the execution of that agreement.
Yep.
The signing process.
Yep. Both parties have signed. Countdown started.
And a lot of the times it all depends on where you're getting your funding, et cetera, from, because the banker would have already mentioned she would need that appraisal and inspection. So that would pretty much close getting your ducks in a row.
Correct. And again, prior to us, the minute we get that offer letter signed is when we need to activate these other items, right? And Nikira and I just had that conversation. Okay, so where do we go from here? So now the agreement is signed. Chanel, what are you going to do with the next attorney?
So we don't make another move, so to speak, until the bank says we've granted the financing, right? So once we're told that the financing is approved, we would then advise the seller's attorney that financing is in place. And that is the point at which we investigate title. So investigating title in the Bahamas, to put it the shortest way possible, is we are mandated by law to look at all of the documents that touch and concern that piece of land for a period of not less than 30 years. And what that means is you go back 30 years from the day that you're looking at the year that you're looking at the title, and you have to make sure that all of that is fine. The documents were drafted properly. And then we also look at making sure there are no encumbrances or no charges or liens on the property. And if there are, we ensure at the end of the process that those charges or liens are discharged and paid off, so that they don't follow you, because they will follow you if we don't make sure that that's completed.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So then you have investigated title, and then you've approved the title, supposedly. What happens next?
We then request a conveyance from the seller's attorney. That conveyance is essentially a deed that transfers the title from the seller to yourself as a purchaser. And then once we've vetted that and approved that, we have you in to sign your conveyance document, as well as a plethora of other documents.
Let me interject here, because where's the bank come in, where the bank now gives you approval to prepare the mortgage document? Are we there yet?
So we had already indicated that. So
Okay.
Once she's approved, the bank gives us that instruction, and then we investigate title. So once we get to the point where we've approved title, that's when we request the conveyance, and then we have you in to sign that conveyance. In addition to the conveyance title deed, we will also have you sign your mortgage document and a few other documents that will need to accompany the mortgage package back to the bank. And so we make sure that all of that is put together, explained to you, packaged off, and then we send it on to the bank, at which point the ball is passed for them to handle.
Yep. Go ahead, Inga.
So the question I have is, so you're checking on the title of the property, but what if the purchaser, well, the seller have a lien against their name? Would that hinder the sale at that time?
So it depends on the type of lien. So a lien is a charge, an encumbrance that affects the property. So for example, a mortgage is a lien. So say the person who's selling to you has an existing mortgage. At the end of the transaction, we will take out of the sale proceeds enough money to pay off their bank so that the bank can satisfy that mortgage on the record. Another type of lien is real property tax. We want to make sure that the real property taxes are paid up to the date of closing. And we make sure that that's discharged. Another lien can be a Supreme Court judgment. So a lot of people aren't aware that if someone sues you in your personal capacity, and they get a judgment against you from the court that says you owe them $50,000. And let's say you say, I don't have $50,000, I'm just not paying that. And then you go to the bank to get a mortgage. And then they send me instructions. And then I investigate title and I say, well, LaRonda has a $50,000 judgment against her. Then we can't close that unless you pay the $50,000 judgment to that person who sued you. It also works in the other direction, meaning the seller can't have any judgments that are against them that attach to the property, because when you have a judgment that is against you, it attaches to any real estate that you own. So if you even own a home now and you get a judgment against you, it does attach to that property, except that if you got a mortgage, the mortgage will have priority. So we can still sell your property, but you would still have that judgment following you personally and any other asset that you have. So it's very important to make sure that if someone sues you, that you make sure that you settle any judgments against you, or you fight in court to make sure that there's no judgment ultimately given against you.
So Ashkel, let's talk about this process where you've approved the loan. They brought in 10 of 10 things. The loan is approved. Let's talk about this commitment letter process and how much more money you want me to bring you after I get approved.
So after we would have gotten the legal documents from Sherelle, and everything is in order, we're now ready to disperse. The other fees that you would have to come up with, the additional fees that you would have to come up with are insurances. And we have an insurance company, so we have the insurances. We need to make sure that our asset is covered. You would have to have closing costs and bank fees, and it's different based on the risk. So if it's a purchase, it's 1.5%. If it's a construction loan, and by all means, you get that same 5% deposit if you're constructing as well. If it's a construction loan, then it's a 2.5% fee that you would have to pay the bank. The other fees attached to that would be life insurances, because what we want to know is if something happens to you, we're not in the business of holding homes. We're not in the business of real estate like Matt is. So what we want to know is we will get our monies for the mortgage that you have with us, and you can go and your benefactor is free to come and collect the mortgage documents for that home because it's free and clear. And those are the only other fees that you have attached.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So one of the questions in the group that I'll address now is percentage based. How much money do you actually need to have liquid in savings to make the purchase happen? I think that number, if we add up the 5% down, potentially you need somewhere to the tune of about 5% for the lawyer. We're at 10. And if you're buying under 500,000, we're talking about 2% H&L on average, 2-3% VAT.
Well, it changed a little bit. It's more of a sliding scale now. So you're somewhere around 4% based on between $250,000 and $300,000.
Right. So you're going to need anywhere between 10 to 15%, 10 to 14% in savings, is liquid money. And the bank this is a contingency of approval, because you need to know you could pay Chanel before you get approved. Yeah. So they want to see that on your account.
And one other thing, Matt, too, the good thing about CIBC is in instances where you do have some room in your debt equity, we're prepared to allow you to get a consumer loan to make some of those payments as well.
Right. Does that make sense? First Caribbean clapping for that. Okay, let's address some of the questions here. For the people that are on, how do we get the approval letter? Okay, you can go to owning23.com, and if you've registered, you should have that. But we'll drop that link in the chat. Let's go ahead and put that link in the chat. Can a vehicle mortgage? We answer that. Are there any newly built duplexes via the bank? Yes, reach out to me. I'll send those to you. If you already have a loan, we answered that. Is there irrevocable beneficiary life insurance requirement to collateralize a mortgage loan? A lot of big words. You got that?
An irrevocable life insurance?
Is there an irrevocable beneficiary life insurance requirement to collateralize a mortgage loan?
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is. Irrevocable. Okay.
For the amount of the mortgage.
For the amount of the mortgage, right? Or more. Yeah. So you need a life insurance at the value of the amount you purchase it. You purchase it for $250, you need a life insurance policy of that amount or more. Yeah. Go ahead, Carla. Okay. What percentage of the total cost is paid by the buyer? We covered that, so it's about 10 to 12%. And let's see what other questions we got here. Yes, you can submit offers to the bank unless it's listed exclusively with a real estate company. You can submit your offer to the bank or their representative. What is the average fixed mortgage rate currently being offered in the Bahamas for, they give a range here, 15 to 30-year mortgages?
So at CIBC, we're offering a 4.85% rate.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
And 5% down.
Yeah, 4.85.
4.85.
4.85. Okay, awesome. I hope that answers your question. What if I currently have a non-performing loan I'm trying to pay down? You already start off wrong. To pay down with a small balance around 5K. If I pay that off, how will that affect my application later on?
Well, what we don't do is we don't hold things like that against you because life happens. If one thing COVID taught all of us is that life happens, right? And there are things that happen to people and happen in their lives that may have caused that. And so have the conversation. And once we are able to determine that, then we're able to know. And one of the things, I don't remember the speaker, but one of the things that he spoke about is character. And once we have that conversation and we're able to determine what it is that caused that and whether or not we could move forward, then by all means, we can move forward with the mortgage for you.
Awesome. How much is the suggested average amount you would need? Okay, we covered that. After you qualified, if my husband and I are separated, will that make a difference? Will that make the process of owning a home more difficult for me? Chanel, why don't you take that?
Well, that sounds like a bank question. If you are separated, my legal advice would be that you probably should not be going into any further investment until you determine where the relationship is really headed. Because if you are ultimately getting divorced, any property that you have acquired during that marriage and sometimes before the marriage, depending on the circumstances, will be a part of the ancillary negotiations, meaning how that property is going to be split between the parties. So it's the same way the banks typically do not lend to persons that are not married, couples that are not married. In the same way, you should use the same principle. If you are contemplating divorce, it's likely that you should just wait and determine where you're headed.
Yeah. Okay. How many people is them people who never win anything? I mean, they be trying to, you know, you're like, boy, hey, I feel so bad. I don't apply for nothing. I don't sign up for nothing no more.
Don't win nothing.
Man, I don't win a thing.
Not a thing.
I think she raised her hand first. Where she was the first person. I feel your pain. Come get something then. Come. And you as well. You raised your hand. Come up. You in a black shirt. Yep. There you go. Today is your day. I feel that's my people right there. I never win a thing, man. One time, we was trying to, I got 4 boys and we love up for fast food. Unfortunately, I'm embarrassed to say that. We eat fast food too much. And Popeyes had a promotion. They was going, and I say, boy, if we was eating Popeyes left, right, and center, and I say, I know we win this today. Nothing. Been pre-qualified. What if my employer pays me in cash? Oh boy.
So
selling dope. No, you don't sell. I only joking.
So what we encourage you to do is open a bank account and deposit the monies that you get from your employer. Even if you use your ABM card to withdraw most of it out, at least we have a record of what is being deposited, and we can use that record to qualify you or to substantiate what it is that you're making.
Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, we would be here into another day if we take all the questions, because all of your questions are super, super important. We would love to answer them. If you're here, it means that you're a part of the One Oak family, and so you're going to be following us for lots of other opportunities. We definitely want to announce 200 home so that you have an opportunity to take advantage of that. And anyone who's still here and you still need to register to pre-qualify, definitely do that. Meet One Oak Desk. And there's a number of other announcements, but I'm going to allow Matt to wrap up the panel at this time so that you can take advantage of everything that is left for this event.
Yeah, certainly. So closing thoughts from a legal perspective. What do people need to be doing now? These people are mostly first-time buyers. What are your closing thoughts for them?
Well, my thoughts would be is, it comes back to you, Matt. If you start with a good team, with a good realtor, I think that sets your direction. The realtors, they know who the productive attorneys are. They know which banks you ought to be with. They know what advice you need to have in moving forward. But as a lawyer, what I would say to you is first-time home buyers, ask all the questions, ask them 10 times, get the answers, find lawyers who are willing to be available and to answer your questions. Be proactive. Call, and call again. One of the homeowners said that it may seem annoying to you and it may seem annoying to who you're calling, but at the end of the day, only you pay the price. Make sure that they explain to you where things are in the process. Make sure they explain to you whatever it is that you don't understand. And so that would be the biggest advice that I would have for you today.
Ashkwell and Akira, closing thoughts?
Well, my closing thought would be it's possible. A lot of people look at the process, they hear about the process and they think it's not for me. And if you are determined, it takes sacrifice, but if you put sacrifice with determination, we're here to work with you to make homeownership a reality for you.
Yes, I would piggyback on that as well. I always say knowledge is power. So even if you're not ready now, start now. If you don't have that 5% now or those closing costs now, start now. Knowledge is power. And I would hope that the knowledge that you would have gleaned from this particular seminar would propel you to get where you need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. My closing thoughts are similar. Guys, you've made a good choice. The room was not packed, and that means you stand out even more in the sense that you've made a decision that I want to do something different with my life. And so I really, really congratulate all of you for coming out and taking the time to really invest in your future. And so with that, Sherelle, I turn it back over to you. Let's give our panel a round of applause.